Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to EMPA's webinar for April. We've got somewhere over 200 people registered for this, so hopefully most of you have been able to make it. We'll just start off with acknowledgement of country. In a spirit of reconciliation, EMPA recognises the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and the communities of many diverse peoples across the country and the world with their continuing connection to land, place, waters, and culture. We respectfully acknowledge and honour all Indigenous communities, past, present, future, and are grateful for their ongoing and vibrant presence. Right, well, welcome. My name is Sam Rossiter-Stead. I'm based in a small rural community north of Wellington in New Zealand. In my day job, I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the New Zealand Public Service, and I'm here today as the co-chair of EMPA. So welcome. It's a very exciting webinar we've got coming up. And we look forward to lots of input from everybody online in terms of asking questions, etc. Right, now today's webinar is titled Using Culturally Appropriate Communication to Reach Diverse Communities. And this is one of those subjects that I know that everyone involved in emergency management knows is important, but not that many of us actually really know the nuts and bolts of how to address this issue. It's a massive issue for us, and there's a lot of work been done, really good work been done recently to help find some solutions. So we've got two amazing presenters today. The first one is Dr. Kate Delmo. There's Kate on the screen. Give us a wave, Kate. There we are. She is the head of strategic communication discipline in the School of Communication, University of Technology, Sydney. She teaches into the postgraduate and undergraduate programs in strategic communication, and her research interests explore the intersection of data, technology, and people. Anchored in the UN Sustainable Development Goals on sustainable communities and climate action, her projects examine the ecology of crisis, emergency, and disaster risk resilience. Her research in these areas embodies a multi-sectoral approach by examining resilience of both emergency and disaster responders and the communities that they serve. And Kate's managed funded research projects such as the cultural competency of emergency responders in emergency preparedness and spontaneous volunteerism in Australia. She's intrigued by the role that digital technology plays in encouraging stakeholder coordination and engagement across crises, emergencies, and disaster life cycles. She also investigates social media in reshaping cultures and empowering change. Welcome, Kate. Right, next up we have Melinda McDonald, also known as Min. She's an experienced, give us a quick wave, Melinda, you could hear us, there's Min, there we are. She's an experienced communication specialist, researcher, and a qualified operational firefighter, as we can see from her uniform, and she's with Fire and Rescue New South Wales. Having transitioned from a corporate career, Min has dedicated the past 6 years to firefighting, combining her expertise in communication and her passion for community safety to make a lasting impact. Her primary focus is on community risk reduction in culturally and linguistically diverse communities in Australia. She emphasises the importance of prevention as the first line of defence in reducing fire-related injuries and fatalities. She believes curiosity, collaboration, and relentless optimism are key to equipping emergency responders with greater cultural competence and empowering communities to actively participate in risk reduction programme design. She shared this work with international audiences at the Australian and New Zealand Disaster and Emergency Management Conference on the Gold Coast and at the International Communications Conference in Toronto, Canada. And in 2023, she received a Churchill Fellowship to study co-designed fire and emergency risk reduction programs for culturally diverse communities worldwide, which she will commence next month in May. She currently serves as Vice President of Women and Firefighting Australasia, where she actively contributes to the advancement of women in fire services. We are so lucky to have these two wonderful presenters today. So thank you so much for giving up your time. Welcome, Kate. Welcome, Min. I'm just going to throw right over to you. I think we're going to kick off with a video and away we go. This floor is yours.
Terrific. Thank you, Sam. So I will start by sharing how we began this journey. And I think it's best illustrated with an incident that we attended. I'm just seeing, Sam, in the chat messages that the guests can't actually see us. So if somebody has the technology to fix that, I'm hoping that they can hear. I'll continue anyway. A couple of years ago, there was an emergency incident where a family of 6 were rushed to hospital with carbon monoxide poisoning after they used an outdoor charcoal cooker to heat their 1-bedroom granny flat. Thankfully, on this occasion, there were no fatalities, but the situation could have been much worse. A few days later, I was in a fire station when a colleague who I respect said, "Why would anyone do anything so stupid?" And the question really got me to thinking, perhaps there are better questions we can ask. Like, a good one to begin with is, why are 6 people living in a 1-bedroom granny flat? Other questions might be, do they understand the risk? Were they aware of what the consequences might be? And had Fire and Rescue done everything they could to ensure that those people had access to the information they needed to keep themselves and their families safe? Once I started asking questions, I am indeed relentlessly optimistic and very curious. And I reached out to Kate at the University of Technology, Sydney, to see what advice she had about how we could begin to explore that more. And that is how the snowball came to begin rolling. I will jump straight from the beginning to the end and give you a video that will show you just one part of what the project led to and how we're applying it in a practical sense at Fire and Rescue New South Wales.
The most recent census shows us that 1 in 3 New South Wales residents were born overseas and 1 in 4 speak a language other than English at home. To keep our communities safe, it's vital that our fire prevention and education messages are culturally inclusive so that everyone receives the information they need to protect themselves and those they love. The CLEAR model is a simple tool developed by Fire and Rescue New South Wales and the University of Technology, Sydney, that helps us to ensure we're engaging in a way that is meaningful and culturally sensitive. Before giving a presentation, the CLEAR model gives us 5 important elements to consider. These include cultural awareness. Gather insights into the cultural beliefs, practices and language of the community you're engaging with. You can ask the person who contacted you for more information, use the links and sheets on the intranet toolkit, or contact the Fire and Rescue Cultural Diversity Officer for support. Lived experience. Try not to make assumptions, but consider the experiences people may have had and that different individuals have different needs. Remember that someone newly arrived may have different ideas or understanding about risk and safety than a long-term resident. Engagement. Think about your role in prevention and education and who in your community may need more information or support or may be at higher risk. Look for meaningful and sustainable opportunities to connect. Accessibility. Share information that is relevant and actionable. Keep your key messages simple and think about using body language, props, video or images to ensure you're understood.
So you can see how quick and easy that can happen, yeah? Keep looking when cooking.
This is the brochure, so it's just for fire safety information.
Yes, thank you very much. Because I am not very good at English, so I can read it slowly, then I can understand. Okay, thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
Relationships. Building respectful and lasting relationships is important. We want our communities to know we value the trust they place in us.
it's okay, I can't do it by myself. It's not. Yeah. Just remember, you're not bothering us. We love coming and seeing you because we get to meet our community. It's no cost to you.
Let's see our fireys put this into action in a fire safety presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tony, and this is Deb, and we're from Fire and Rescue New South Wales. And we protect the community from fires and other emergencies.
Today we have fire safety information that you can use to keep you and your family safe at home. First, it's important to have a working smoke alarm in your home.
Does everyone know what this is?
Smoke alarm.
This is a smoke alarm.
A working smoke alarm keeps you and your family safe. It gives you an early warning sign if there's fire or smoke in your home. If you hear this sound in an emergency, you need to get out as quickly as possible and call 000. What do you call? 000. And what do we ask for? Fire. Fantastic.
Does anyone know how we check our smoke alarms?
Just press a button.
Excellent, that's correct. This is the sound that a working smoke alarm makes.
Remember, sound is good, no sound, no good. That's right, we check it once a month. Remember, when you get home today, please go and check your smoke alarms and make sure they're working. They keep you and your family safe.
What do we do if there's fire or smoke in the home?
Get out, stay out, call 000.
Excellent.
That's right, we get down low beneath the smoke where the air is clear.
You can access the CLEAR model and supporting links and tools in the Cultural and Linguistic Diversity Toolkit on the Fire and Rescue New South Wales intranet.
All right, over to you, Kate. Are there questions?
Thank you for that, Min. Sam, I would like to ask you for your preference. Would you like me to show the mobile app that is also one of the specific outputs for the project, or are there already some questions that you'd like us to answer and I can perhaps show that later?
It'd be great to show the video now, actually, Kate, about the app, partly because I'm dying to see it myself. So go for it.
Okay, thank you. A bit of background. So the video that Min has just presented a while ago provided context in terms of what we were trying to address. So this next video that we'll show you is a smart mobile phone app. It's a prototype that we have developed under the same funded grant, bringing together the findings that we have gathered in this particular project. So this is quite long, but I'll probably just show you the first 2 minutes, because from there, I think you will see the idea in terms of what we were trying to achieve in this project. Sam, I'm having a bit of a technical glitch here. I'm happy to perhaps play this in a bit, and I'll try to troubleshoot on my end. Thank you.
No worries at all. Kate, do you just want to tell us a little bit about the app? However, just a little bit about where the idea came, stage in the development you're at now with it.
Yes. So when we started this project, we were trying to think about ideas in terms of what tools can we use to actually help us scale the information provision that we're going to do. So at this stage, Fire and Rescue New South Wales has an extensive resource bank of materials online in their website that is composed of translated PDF information sheets around fire safety, and in particular home fire safety. So we have seen there that there has been an extensive work in terms of how Fire and Rescue New South Wales is trying to communicate with their communities. However, there are also some logistical problems there, because there's only so much that we can do in terms of translating these documents into all the languages that we have that are represented here in this multicultural society that we have in Australia. So we were thinking, what about a particular mobile app that can perhaps use the value of photographs and videos and visuals this time taking it away from the problem of translated text. Because one of the big findings that we've had in this project is that when you're trying to speak to cultural communities or called communities, it is beyond translation. It's not necessarily just translation. You have to understand, you'd rather have to have a bigger cultural awareness. What are the symbols perhaps that resonate with different cultural groups? And can we use these kinds of symbols in terms of trying to promote what we want them to do? So in this particular project, we have started from scratch. So we have conducted focus group discussions with selected cultural and linguistically diverse communities in New South Wales. And from there, we have conducted user testing in terms of pilot testing, once again, the app in itself. So first, we've tried to look at what information would they want to see in the app. Number two, what can we do on our end in terms of packaging information that will resonate with them and that's something that they can relate to. And then we have also tried to come up with ways in terms of having a prototype app, and you will see that later on in the video, and presenting that back to the communities and asking if it actually works. Do they understand what we're trying to do here? So this was a discovery grant that was given to us, or that was awarded to us by the New South Wales Reconstruction Authority. So we were only able to, our remit was to develop and design and user test or pilot test a prototype. So that's where we are at in terms of this. And hopefully there's a chance for us to actually run this and see if there will be an uptake and we can actually tick the boxes in terms of what we wanted to do. Min, you might want to provide more info on that.
Yeah, one of the valuable things that's come out of this project is a recognition that communication is more than translation. I think it's well recognised that we have an incredibly diverse society in Australia and in New South Wales particularly. And unfortunately, with a very Anglo-Australian, Anglo-normative mindset within most of our emergency management agencies, there's been an expectation that simply translating information into another language, and particularly the top 10 languages that are spoken in New South Wales, would do enough. This has been a fairly ad hoc approach, and I think the project has been key in explaining to our executive leadership and our senior management how those top 10 languages that are spoken in New South Wales don't necessarily represent the people who are most at risk of fire or the people who might be most isolated from the information that they need in order to take action. The use of visual tools, I mean, I guess one of the things that we realised straight away in our focus groups was that nobody was turning up to those groups carrying our A4 translated home fire safety information, but everybody had a smartphone. And so the idea of developing the app came from an understanding of how the community were already accessing information. And once we started talking to them about what their needs would be, it became very easy to see how the use of video material and images, simplified language, and even the addition in the late stages of a glossary made that information so much more accessible. We aren't funded at the moment to launch the full app, but it has been placed as a high priority in fire and rescue strategic prevention and education remits. So we're very hopeful that as a follow-up to that discovery grant, we will be able to access the funding in the near future to continue on with that work.
Mm-hmm. Sam, I think I already figured out the technical glitch that I have on my end. So would you like me to play the video for the mobile app?
Go for it, Kate.
Thank you.
Welcome to Ready, Set, Go, a prevention, preparedness and response app that gamifies the process of preparing your family and home for potential emergencies. Let's take a quick look around. Upon downloading the app, users are introduced to the app and how it works. Users are then required to input information such as their personal details and home information. By allowing push notifications, users can be alerted to time-sensitive information, such as bushfire and flood alerts, based on their location. They are then shown how the app works, including how to navigate the app, where the settings and preferences are, how to save words to the dictionary, how to see their progress of learning, and how to locate the game icons. The app has three main content areas. Learn, which educates users on key fire safety knowledge, including how to create a home fire escape plan, how to keep safe learning modules, and safety checklists. Practice, which allows users to test their knowledge through game-like scenarios, including how to test their smoke alarm, practice their home fire safety plan, and how to keep looking when cooking. And finally, Act, which walks users through the scenario of how to call 000 if there was an emergency. The menu bar in the top left corner brings up the settings and dictionary, as well as the information from the onboarding, including About Us and how to use the app. The profile icon on the top right-hand side of the screen allows users to edit their personal information, including their emergency contact and living situation. Let's take a look now at the content areas in more detail. Firstly, in Learn, users learn how to keep safe through small learning modules designed to be interactive and easy to follow, using visuals and simplified language. Keywords such as hazards are explained further and can be added to the user's dictionary for future reference. In this section, users can learn how to avoid fire hazards in their homes, how to test their smoke alarms, how to escape a fire, wait for emergency services, put out a fire, and care for burns. Each learning module includes graphics and videos to help explain the key safety messages, reducing the need for text-based translation. Let's see an example now using the How to Test Your Smoke Alarm learning module.
Okay, I think I'll just pause it there because it's already an indication of what the rest of the app, what we wanted to achieve by using the rest of the app here. So as you can see, we've tried to put together the findings from the broader project we're in. The use of visuals, videos, simplified language, and interactivity is quite important in terms of how we can build resilience among our communities in preparing for fire and other hazards and emergencies. So I'll stop sharing now once again, and I'll give it back to you, Sam, for some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Min. Don't forget to pop your questions into the Q&A, which is just one of those buttons on the bottom of your Zoom screen. I'm really interested in what the biggest barriers are here. And obviously, we've talked about language. The app shows a really good way of getting around that with some very clever visuals there. But what about the barrier of trying to access these communities? Often, we just heard 1 in 3 people from New South Wales didn't originate from there. So more and more communities are springing up, and they can tend to be quite insular. So how do we access those communities?
One of the things that we have realized in this project is that when you're trying to look at particular communities there, we need to look at the ecology of support system that is around those community members. So for example, a cultural awareness of a particular cultural group will tell us that there probably is an importance of reliance on religious groups that are formed within that community. So tapping into these opinion leaders is quite important. Some would even regard schools are the first go-to information portals in terms of getting information on this. So what we have realized here is that if we're just going to look at language as the particular barrier, then we're missing the point, because apparently it's not necessarily just language. We need to tap into who are the stakeholders or the groups of support communities that these community members trust. So trying to understand, once again, who they trust is a particular way for us to actually have access to those communities. And from there, it's easier for you to be able to communicate the information that you wanted them to know about this. Min, if you would like to add some more.
Sure. I think one of the things that it's important for us to note is that being culturally and linguistically diverse is not a risk factor for fire or emergency in your home, but it's where cultural diversity intersects with other risk factors that we often find that emergency incidents increase. So, for instance, where people are aged or very young, living with a disability, have poor literacy levels or lack of access to information because they do not have a strong English proficiency. So I think, one of the important things was that Fire and Rescue New South Wales had to recognise that we were not particularly culturally competent. We didn't have a strong set of skills in intercultural communication or weren't necessarily authentically engaging for sustainable relationships with our communities. Once we've committed to that work, and I know that a number of other similar agencies are doing the same work, and we were fortunate to have a multi-agency reference panel who contributed to this project, we've realised that one of the easiest ways is to be more present in our communities. I'm based in a regional community, a large regional city, and I do know which organisations are in our town. I'm aware of our local multicultural network, and so we're really encouraging our own people to take steps, proactive steps, to engage with their communities and to see, to talk to them and ask them what they see their risk factors being and how we can best deliver the information they need in the format that they require it.
Great, thank you. It is, we're starting to get some questions coming in now, and there's a couple around who can actually use this app. So the first one, which is really straightforward, is can all states use this app, or is it only New South Wales?
Yeah, at the moment, the prototype was built specifically for use by Fire and Rescue New South Wales, but it was seen that there was potential for this to be complementary to another app that already exists, which is the Hazards Near Me app that shows real-time locations of flood and fire in New South Wales. Our focus was very much, though, not on the response and recovery section of an emergency incident, but more on the prevention and preparedness. So how can we help people to prevent emergencies in their home? How can we help them to be prepared for potential natural disasters? So at the moment, it is a prototype. Best practice, best case scenario would be in the future that it would act as a complement to other apps that exist that assist in response and recovery, and that it would be available Australia-wide. I think, there's a recognition by the government in general that we're double timing on a number of things, or, circling back over ground that's already been covered. And I'm a huge fan of collaboration to minimise that and to make sure that we're making the best use of our resources.
And all we need really is a lot of money then, and we can get that sorted out throughout the whole of Australia. It's brilliant. There's another question along the same kind of lines here from Christy. Christy's saying, does this app provide warnings about hazards, including flood, bushfire, etc., similar to the Vic Emergency app in Victoria?
I think I'll take this one, Min. So very similar to what Min has mentioned a while ago. The focus of this mobile app prototype that we have developed is in the preparedness stage, because one of the assumptions that we were playing around with when we were conceptualizing the entire project is that there is usually this problem about mobile connectivity when hazards, emergencies, and disasters occur. So sometimes that's the first thing that goes off. So what we were trying to say is that hopefully, if we are going to focus on the preparedness side, these community members already know what to do before their actual mobile connectivity goes down. And so this is quite central in terms of how we have designed the entire project. And as what Min has mentioned a while ago, ideally, blue skies thinking, it would be good to have one particular app wherein you have the preparedness, the response and recovery features all together. And this will entail, like what Sam has mentioned a while ago, a collective approach across the emergency, disaster, and hazard preparedness and response and recovery sector. But I think that's what's going to actually build and empower resilience amongst community members, because it's a one-stop shop. But at this stage, it's just quite interesting to see that there is already a take-up in terms of how community members appreciate the value of apps and technology in terms of preparing them for what can potentially go wrong.
Yeah, thank you.
We can certainly take it as encouraging that we've already seen the New South Wales SES and the New South Wales RFS work together to bring together floods near me and fires near me. And that type of collaboration across agencies, I think, is key to future success in reaching more of our community members.
Absolute no-brainer to me. Just a couple more questions on how you develop the app. First one from Carmen. Carmen saying it's a great idea, but wondering how you decided to use an app as opposed to a web browser.
Right. So the main so when we have conducted the focus group discussion, so there were two phases for this project. So phase one was really trying to understand what are the issues, the barriers in terms of communicating fire safety to our communities. And phase two would be around the output. So around phase one, when we were trying to talk with various communities there, we tried to get their insights in terms of the readability, the usability of, let's say, information they get from the website. So we have shown them features of Fire and Rescue New South Wales website. And then from there, we tried to extrapolate conversations in terms of what about there is another tool that we can use. So the findings really there was that community members found the information found on the website helpful. But when we're trying to tell them about mobility, the ability to actually access information on the go, this is where the concept of mobile app came into the picture. And very early on in our conceptualizing of this research, we already thought that there has to be another way wherein it's a more portable way for people to actually access the information that they need for this. Web browser is it's important, it's exhaustive, but then not everybody, especially from the CALD communities who just probably came in here to Australia, would prioritize getting information from a website. However, if they are being pointed to something that they can access while on the go, while they are perhaps commuting, for example, the ease and relative ease rather of mobile phones, that's what we were trying to anchor the rest of the mobile app conversation that we've had here. So we think that it's relatively easier for CALD community members and even others outside of CALD communities to use mobile phones to actually access information, because we have seen that this is the kind of usage patterns that most of our community members have.
It's great. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, it's there's always a balance, isn't there? But I think that it does seem to make sense to me. And we need to utilize the fact that so many people have a smartphone these days, such a high percentage. Keep those questions coming in. The next one is from Melanie. Melanie's saying, how did you test culturally appropriate language and words to ensure that you got the information across? That's quite a big question.
There's a couple of things that I could speak to there, Kate. Obviously, fire and rescue and other fire agencies in Australia are well known for using colloquial language, slogans, rhymes, etc. A lot of our fire safety messaging has grown up around what children might like to receive in a school. So, for instance, most of us will have learned stop, drop, cover and roll, or get down low and go, go, go. One of our first focus groups, it became really clear when speaking with members of the Mandarin community in North Sydney, that the translation that we were using for get down low and go, go, go was very ineffective. The word we were using for get down low referred more to squatting or crouching rather than to crawling, which has movement implied. And the repetition of go, go, go did not imply momentum in the same way that it does in English. So we began to say, okay, well, how do we simplify this messaging? We created a little working group, communication working group within this project. And that's actually a body of work that is also being undertaken by Sydney University as part of another collaboration with Fire and Rescue New South Wales, where we're looking at how can we understand exactly what it is that we want people to do. And in the first video that I showed, you would have seen that we'd stopped saying necessarily get down low and go, 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 but more get out, stay out, get beneath the smoke where the air is clear, and making it much more simple to understand what is it that we're asking you to do and why are we asking you to do it. I do think it's important, though, to keep reinforcing as well that it's not just about testing culturally appropriate language. A lot of the language of emergency management needs to be simplified for the sake of at-risk English speakers also. We pitch things at a level that is not necessarily relevant to people in our most at-risk communities. And here in Tamworth, and I'm sure in every town that our guests come from, there will be an area that we unfortunately sometimes refer to as our frequent flyers, an area where fires are more likely to happen because of socioeconomic factors, educational factors, all of the other disadvantages that people experience. We know that those community members aren't seeking out our written information either. So, simplifying language, becoming more accessible, engaging authentically with our communities in real time and as human beings is really going to be clear. To pardon the pun, will be a clear part of communicating effectively.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, Min, another very key, another finding that I found very fascinating was on this concept of rhyming words. So we are very much aware that if we want a particular slogan to tick and for us to actually remember that, rhyme is actually a particular tool that we use so that these slogans are able, we can remember these slogans. And the communities that we have consulted say that if you translate this particular slogan into our local language, the rhyming element is gone. So when the rhyming element is gone, they don't necessarily remember it. But you see, this is one of those things that usually we take for granted. Okay, it's in English, it rhymes, it should be better understood. But when you are going down to the level of community members and you ask them, does this actually work? Do you understand what they say? The conversation makes an interesting turn because to them, it doesn't resonate the way it does to us, to most of us. Number two, if you ask them to translate them, these particular slogans to their local language, the rhyme element is gone. So therefore, memory is weak. So again, this is when we were thinking that maybe it's not necessarily just around translated language like text. And this is where the value of visuals, videos came into the picture, because at least as we know, as we say, a photo is, what is that again? 1,000 words, not getting it right. But what we're saying is that it's prone to better interpretation across different cultural groups, visuals rather than text.
It's a really interesting point. Here in New Zealand, obviously, one of our biggest risks is always earthquake. And we've got a really, really well-known phrase that actually hasn't been around that long. It's only been around for a few years, but it's, if an earthquake is long or strong, get gone. I would say a very high percentage of New Zealanders know that. It's very smart, it's very clever, it's very clear, and it's resonated. It really has resonated. But it's totally useless if you translate it. It means absolutely nothing if you translate it. So that visual element, and that's why I think that the video we saw earlier on is so good, because that visual element is exactly what we need to do that. And how many different languages are you actually dealing with in New South Wales with this? How many languages, Min, are you actually, would you have to conquer in order to make this work?
Yeah, the information from the last census is that there are just over 300 languages being spoken in New South Wales. So even if we had the time and the resources, it's certainly not effective to see translation as the only solution. And, that was really reinforced by the focus groups that we ran as well. We did focus groups within the Greater Sydney area, but we also visited Armidale, where there's a large proportion of Yazidi community members have been settled there. And what we experienced was just that, the disproportionate risk or access or level of English proficiency is all much more significant. For instance, in the top 10 languages, we know in New South Wales, both Filipino and Hindi fall in that top 10, but we also know that there's really strong self-reported English proficiency rates within those two communities. So we might be investing resources in translating materials for people who are perfectly able to access them, and possibly more than some of our, English as a first language community members. So it really is about unpacking what our underlying assumptions are, and really thinking through who is most at risk. Where do they receive their information from? What is the most accessible format for them to understand it? And how can we ensure that we are giving them the information and the actions they need to take in order to protect themselves and their families?
And it wouldn't just be, obviously, 300 languages in New South Wales is quite an extraordinary number. But that would be replicated in other areas, wouldn't it? This would be an Australia-wide issue.
It would be similar to that Australia-wide. Obviously, there are some states where there's a more diverse community, but certainly in New South Wales and Victoria, and across the board in Australia, there's not quite 25% of people speak a language other than English at home. So it's a significant proportion of our community.
Now, look, we've got a fair number of people online, and we're getting through the questions really well, so please post them in the Q&A. But for all we know, one of those people online might have a huge amount of money. They could have won the lotto at the weekend or something, and they might just be sitting there thinking, how on earth can I usefully use this windfall? How much cash do you reckon you actually would need to do exactly what you want to do and roll this thing out? Let's talk numbers.
How deep are your pockets, Sam? Look, I think, we understand that across the spectrum of emergency management, there are a number of different communities in need, and certainly Fire and Rescue is actively working on disability inclusion and on fire ed for children. So it's definitely about it's rather than, nominating a number, I guess I'd say we just need the government to understand that actually we do need to be funded for this type of work. So, we're all very aware of safe driver campaigns that are delivered by Transport for New South Wales and the New South Wales Police. Fire and Rescue receives no ongoing funding for this type of community safety work. Now, people are often surprised when I say, well, during the 2019-2020 bushfires, there were 24 fatalities, and I think around 30 fatalities during the flooding events of the Northern Rivers. But every year in Australia, 55 people die in house fires, many of which are preventable. So, those other two events stopped the nation, and people were horrified, but actually there's this silent epidemic happening, and I can't stress strongly enough that there's a responsibility that the government needs to take for that.
Do we know how many of those people that died came from, say, non-English speaking families?
Yeah, I do. It's why I emphasise that just being culturally diverse does not necessarily put you at risk. Culturally diverse people are not disproportionately represented in that number, to my understanding, but we also know that the collection of data at an emergency incident site can have flaws, because of course that information is being captured and recorded by a station officer on a fire truck who may not have had training in understanding what the cultural risk factors were, or may not know, how at that point in time how the fire started. So we do know that our incident data is not enough for us to rely on, and that we need to be conscious of reaching all of our community members and making sure that everyone has access to that information they need to keep themselves safe.
Yeah, and I'm sure these chief fire officers have got some amazing skills, but this wouldn't be, this isn't why they went into the role, and this wouldn't be their primary purpose, would it?
Yeah, and I think we move more, we edge into the territory of organisational development and leadership when we start this conversation. But what we do know is that Fire and Rescue has long service tenures. We have a really militaristic operational style. And so what we have is people who really signed up to the job 10, 20, 30 years ago with the intention of fighting fires. And so now that we understand that there have been changes that necessitate greater work in the prevention and education space, not everybody is here for that ride. And it's definitely a challenge. It's one that I think our senior leaders recognise, and we're certainly, actively working on that space. But like many militaristic organisations, that's a slow ship to turn.
It's interesting, I'm a great believer that your greatest strength becomes your greatest weakness if you're not very careful. And here in New Zealand, we have FENS, Fire Emergency New Zealand, which has a really similar issue in the fact that one of the great strengths is the fact that people join and they stay, they have long tenure, they have vast institutional knowledge, they're highly skilled. But that can also become a weakness because of adapting to exactly what you're talking about, Min, can be really hard for somebody who's been in the service for 25 years and knows how to do it and knows how to do it really well. But this is just a whole new layer for them. Okay, keep those questions rolling in. We've got one from Bridget. Bridget says this is a great tool, which I completely agree with, but it doesn't replace building relationships and trust with CALD communities. How else does Fire and Rescue plan on ongoing engagement with these particular communities?
Yeah, so thank you, Bridget, for that question. That's really, I guess, the first video that we showed on the CLEAR model speaks to that part. One of the things we recognised fairly early in the piece, and really the thing that got me started on this journey, was an understanding that Fire and Rescue has room for growth in the way that we engage with our communities. We certainly do have access to geospatial information. We can identify, we have a mapping tool called Prime that shows us where the majority of our fires happen. It gives us information about who lives in our communities. And that is an ongoing body of work. So Fire and Rescue has a community engagement planning system where our zone leadership in areas across New South Wales are able to look at who is in their community, where they may be able to reach them, and essentially fill in different categories to understand and generate an engagement plan. It's the role of firefighters within fire stations across New South Wales to be actively engaged in that work, not specifically around cold communities, but in general across the range of community engagement programs that we have. So everything from, as I said, fire ed for children, disability inclusion, cold communities, and just general, senior presentations. So that's actually an active part of our role in fire stations in between emergency incidents. I'm not going to pretend that that's something we have completely covered, and that speaks to, what Sam and I just covered, which is that for many people, they feel that that is not, that's not the area that they signed up for. But we're also, we've got a high-performing talent acquisition team who are working to recruit people who understand now what the whole of the job entails. And one of the reasons that's really important, I'll quickly explain, is that over time, more of our furnishings in homes, the way our homes are built, means that more petroleum-based products are used. Homes burn quicker than they used to, in really oversimplified terms. The point to flash over in a modern home is around 7 minutes. Now, for most people, that's beyond the time it takes for us to get there, depending on where you live in a community. So those first 7 minutes and what actions homeowners take and how they've prevented or protected themselves is much more key than it used to be. And so that's why our prevention and education scope is so important.
That's excellent, Melinda. I've got so many questions, honestly. We've got a few minutes left, so please pop some more questions in the Q&A. We've probably got time for a couple more. I'm going to be really naughty, and before people start logging off, I'm going to put in a couple of really big plugs here. One is for the EMPA conference, which is in the first week of June in Canberra. I know, having looked at the list of people that have registered for today's webinar, I know a lot of people are already attending. If you're thinking about should I or shouldn't I, this should be the nudge to at least go onto the EMPA website, have another look, and see. Here we are. Oh, straight up there. There's the details about the conference, and also the award entries. We've extended that by another week, so we've got some good entries already, but we could do with a few more. So you've got until Sunday to get in your entry for the Awards for Excellence, which are always of an incredibly high standard. But if you've got a project that you really feel is worthy of some international recognition, then please pop the entry in. We've simplified the process. It is not an onerous process at all. So and if we require further information, we'll let you know. So pop onto the EMPA website, register for the conference, which I'm sure most of you already have, and have a think about your own projects and if they would be a worthy entry to the Awards for Excellence. Okay, right, we're going back now. If there's any more questions, just pop them in there. I'm going to ask a question, which is just because we've got such an experienced firefighter on our panel today, Min, I'm going to ask you a question. This is something that is very relevant to my particular household. Very good friends of ours, their house suddenly burnt down quite recently, and that suddenly made me go, right, we've got smoke alarms and stuff. There's two schools of thought on preparedness, and one is around fire extinguishers. Some I've heard people say that they could be a they could be a really good thing, but I've also heard a view that actually people are sometimes encouraged not to use them in the wrong way. Would you recommend that we should all have a fire extinguisher in our homes, Mint?
I think in your kitchen, it's worth having a fire extinguisher and a fire blanket. But what I tell people is that at the end of the day, it's the job of the fire services to assist you. And I would hate for anybody to take a risk in trying to use one of those tools if they lacked confidence or if the fire was bigger. So we really say to people, don't begin to use the fire extinguisher or a fire blanket if the fire is already out of control. If it's very small and contained to a pot, by all means, use a fire blanket or a fire extinguisher. But those precious seconds that you might waste trying to use it if you're not confident with it may be the difference between you or another family member getting out safely. So at the end of the day, it's a tragedy to lose a home, and we never take that lightly. But actually, our things can be replaced. Our families can't, and we just encourage people to take action to get out and stay out as quickly as they can. Call 000, meet at your safe meeting place, and wait for us to take care of the rest.
Oh, thank you for that. That's great. I'm going to pop to Bunnings at the weekend. That's brilliant. Right, thank you. Okay, Kate, your final thoughts. What would you like us to take away from today's webinar?
I think it is quite obvious that when you're thinking about preparedness, emergency preparedness, it's not necessarily just the job of one agency. It's not just the job of Fire and Rescue New South Wales to actually think about this. When we're looking at practical work that needs to be done, it is a collective effort of multi-agency coordination, not just between agencies themselves, but co-working and co-designing things with community members. To me, the value of this project really brought that up, the idea that we are taking things for granted often. And the minute that we try to talk to the emergency responders, we understand the realities of their job. And that is the reason why some of them are not able to perhaps put called community communication top priority. And then you talk to the community members, you see there as well the things that they can do very well on their end. We just need to empower them and to make sure that they have the correct information to do that. Now, in a perfect world, if you have emergency responders who are able to communicate effectively with their communities and the communities are able to trust the responders, then building resilience becomes even more impactful. So to me, research projects like this, wherein you have the academia, the industry, and the communities all working together is what we need to be able to solve the solutions that we are all facing, solutions to the problems that we are all facing, not just in Australia, but also elsewhere. So thank you for this opportunity once again, Min, of working with Fire and Rescue New South Wales, and to EMPA for helping us disseminate what it is that we have found in the project and perhaps some of the next steps as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. Now, we've got a question from Fiona, which I'm going to fire at Min. And it's great. We've got so much expertise, not just with our panelists, but with our participants as well, which is great. So, Min, community education is a massive area which needs to be actively carried out by all community groups. Utilise CALD community groups, religious groups to help get the info and education out there. Also need to be mindful that a lot of firefighters in rural communities are volunteers. So taking on language training, etc., may be more challenging. Your thoughts on that, Min?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, you know, living in a regional community myself, I'm very aware of where the limitations are for our volunteers. I do think often people are surprised, though, to know that our volunteer firefighters very much identify with the role. Firefighting is a role that comes with a very strong occupational identity and sense of its own culture. And so I think as we build awareness of the importance of this work and how valuable it is in keeping our communities safe, I think we can, again, going back to my relentlessly optimistic outlook, I think we can believe that there will be people who will come along on that journey with us. In terms of the practical applications, I guess you mentioned earlier, Sam, that I've been fortunate to receive a Churchill Fellowship. And one of the things, I mean, really what I'm going overseas to look at is co-designed community risk reduction programs with cold communities. And I'm very hopeful that I'm spending some time in both rural and metropolitan areas. And I'm hopeful that I'll get some insights into how that's being achieved in the international context that might be of value for Australians as well.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Min. I just and it's not just thank you for giving up your time this morning to talk to us about this project. It's actually just thank you for the dedication that you've put into this area. We're extremely grateful and just keep up the good work. Thank you to everyone for watching and participating. We've had some great questions and great observations. There's a few things in the chat now with people thanking both of our speakers, but I want to thank everyone that's been involved. As always, the recording will be made available to everyone via the EMPA website, and that's in the next few days. And don't forget to check out, as I mentioned, upcoming EMPA events, the conference, and of course the awards. And we hope to see you all again for our next webinar in May. So thank you very much. And over and out from me, Kate and Min. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sam.